I've said it before, and I'll say it again. When it comes to resolving conflicts and reducing violence in the world, it is important that we take highly human-centric approaches. This is because the people who are engaging in violence are just that. They are people. They have needs, desires, and are self-interested. In order to achieve a more peaceful society, we cannot resort to self-defeating violence. Rather, it is incumbent on us to persuade others that it is actually in their best interest to reject violence as a tool for solving problems or creating social cohesion. We must appeal to people's selfishness. We can beat people over the head with logic and reason all day and not make a dent in their behavior if they don't believe that adjusting their behavior would benefit themselves. We have to want to change. We cannot be forced to change, at least not without great cost. But how does this change come? And what are the conditions which make a change in attitude possible? One way to achieve this is through a powerful framework for change, which will be the topic of this episode, called the Transtheoretical Model, or more commonly known as the stages of change. Recognizing when people are ready to change is the most important part about persuading them to take the plunge. This is also philosophically in line with the general attitude of this podcast, in that we are turning away from force and violence and relying on voluntarist ideals in order to have a better world. It's the simple idea that I don't want to force people to behave in a certain way or believe a certain thing. I want them to do so of their own volition. Recognizing when somebody is ready to change is just as important as how we implement that change. If one is not ready, perhaps they have an emotional, financial, or cultural attachment to a previously held position or behavior, it is nearly impossible to help them or force them to change. This is not to say we should never present alternative ideas or lifestyles. It is of the utmost importance to be constantly planting seeds of nonviolence into the hearts and minds of our community. But do not feel like they need to accept the whole buffet of a nonviolent society and lifestyle at one time. Wait until they're ready and they want change. Remember, among one of the highest values in this quest for a more peaceful world is individual agency. If we don't give that to people, then the idea of nonviolence is for naught. I was first introduced to this concept when I worked in the homeless serving sector. It was given as a training on helping those who are experiencing homelessness, people with drug addiction, and the mentally ill. When working with this type of clientele, change is an incredibly difficult and arduous process, and this population in particular is inundated with moralizing about their behavior and that they need to change. What often happens is a strong blowback effect, where they tend to tune out all attempts at behavior modification and never take it seriously, and can then become even more resistant to change, even when it may be necessary for their own well-being. Often, the harder you try to get people to change, the more resistant to change they become. So in order to prevent this blowback, we must recognize if one is in a state of mind where they are willing and motivated to change, then we can have real success in persuasion. This framework, however, is not only useful for convincing others of our point of view, it is also a good way to help you in your own behavior. If there is a habit or mindset you want to change, or more specifically, you think it might be nice to change at some point in the future, using the Transtheoretical Model can help you know when it's time to take action to adjust those behaviors, or when you are regressing into former bad habits. The model was developed by psychology professors James Prochaska and Carlo Diclemente, and was named such because of a combination of different theories of psychotherapy, hence the Transtheoretical Model. The stages of change concept was designed in the context of helping patients who abuse substances, but has since evolved to have a much wider applications into behavior change in general.
There's a whole lot of different theories about how people change. And so what this model tries to do is actually bring together some of the basic principles of a variety of theories. So it's really what they call a collected or an eclectic theory of kind of a model that brings together different perspectives and tries to integrate them around the idea that change happens over time, that there are different parts of the process that are important, and that many of the processes that are identified by many theories of therapy are ones that people can use in their daily life as well as people use in treatment. So that was another piece that really was critical, was finding out that the same principles apply whether you're changing on your own or whether you're going into treatment.
The model has 6 stages, starting with Stage 1, Precontemplation, Stage 2, Contemplation, Stage 3, Preparation, Stage 4, Action, Stage 5, Maintenance, and finally, Stage 6, Relapse. Let's talk about each stage in depth. Stage 1, Precontemplation. What precontemplation essentially means is that you are currently not in a mindset where you believe you need to change. When discussing politics, for example, the majority of people have already decided what they believe in regards to the government, who they will vote for, and how they will behave politically. And not only is thinking of changing their perspective the farthest thing from their mind, they are most likely going to be hostile to other points of view. This is why trying to win political debates has a very low return on investment. Because even if you are correct, people who are in pre-contemplation to your ideas are most likely going to continue to hold on to their own beliefs. Often, pre-contemplation is informed by the culture and society in which you were born. There are certain assumptions about behaviors, beliefs, and morals that are relatively unchallenged. Being presented with a worldview which radically deviates from the norm is often jarring for most people, and they will reflexively look for reasons their beliefs or actions are correct, and how your beliefs or actions are wrong. They may even engage in high degrees of cognitive dissonance. And remember, the status quo is familiar and safe. You know what to expect out of it, even if it is suboptimal. New ideas or new possible futures are uncertain, risky, and even dangerous, and this can lead many of us to remain in the stage of pre-contemplation, which may be the most difficult stage of all to leave.
So we talk about a stage called pre-contemplation, where people just aren't thinking about changing. Well, if you're going to move from there, you need to increase people's interest and concern about the problem. So a lot of people will push aside concerns. No, I'm drinking like everyone else, or no, I'm fine. Well, every once in a while I drink a little bit too much, but I'm really fine. There's not a big problem here. As long as you don't see the problem or have any concern about the problem, it's hard for you to kind of go to the next step, which is really making a risk-reward analysis and saying, do I really need to change this? I mean, what's the pros, what's the cons, what's the pros of staying, what's the pros of changing, and doing that so that you come up with a firm decision. And a lot of times if that firm decision isn't there, then you can't move on to the next step, which is really making a commitment and planning to do the change.
Stage 2, Contemplation. During this stage, you have moved beyond any kind of ambivalence about change and into considering change. you would have begun weighing the costs and benefits of modifying your behavior. Or perhaps you are now open to new ideas about the world and you are willing to give them a fair shake, even if you don't fully accept them. Do not be confused, however. This does not mean you are actually attempting any sort of change, but that it is a worthy consideration for you. The contemplation stage could last from minutes to years, so it is important not to try and rush someone out of contemplation into the next stage. You can help them weigh the pros and cons, but you cannot make the decision for them. They must choose for themselves.
We will see once they progress into contemplation that their awareness, appreciation of the benefits of changing goes up, but often their awareness of the cons go up as well. Because if I am seriously intending to change a long pattern, a long-standing lifestyle or behavior, I start to have to consider that it will cost me in terms of time, in terms of emotion, in terms of effort, in terms of risk of failure, in terms of often having to give up some things, changing my sense of myself. And that increase in the awareness of the costs in contemplation can lead to profound ambivalence. Is it worth it? Is it not? Should I keep progressing? Should I put it off? And in fact, patients in contemplation have been the ones who have really fooled us the most in the past. They will typically, for example, with smoking, they will say they're seriously intending to quit for good in the next 6 months. Without our help, less than 50% will quit for 24 hours in the next 12 months. Okay? The rule of thumb for contemplation is, when in doubt, put it off.
Stage 3. Preparation. Preparation is when one has moved beyond just thinking about change, but they are now getting ready to act on it. At this point, they have decided that it would be better for them to change their lifestyle, behavior patterns, or way of thinking in order to have what they perceive as a more fulfilling life. This can manifest itself in making plans like specific dates when they will get started and what specific actions they are going to take in order to make the change. Often, in the preparation stage, people will start telling their friends and family about the change they are going to make and when they are going to do it. This creates a kind of social accountability, where we become more likely to follow through because we don't want to appear as liars or incapable. If one is being ambiguous about change, or says they might like to change, this usually means they are still in the contemplation stage of the Transtheoretical Model. Being highly specific and creating social expectations is a tell that someone has moved into preparation and they are getting ready to take the plunge.
In preparation, these are folks who are intending to take action in the near future. We usually measure that as the next month. They are convinced that the benefits of acting outweigh the costs. They typically have a plan. It may be to go for professional help. It may be to go for self-help. It may be to get a self-help book, or it may be a plan they create on their own. Their number one concern is, when I act, will I fail? And that's not an irrational anxiety. It's a realistic concern, because when it comes to changing most any chronic behavior, the rule of any one action attempt is relapse rather than sustained action. So it's a realistic fear, but we also know that the better prepared people are, the more likely they are to reach their goals.
Stage 4. Action. In this stage, you aren't just talking about change. You're taking the action steps towards that change. You aren't just talking about going to the gym. You are in the gym 3 times a week. You aren't just making plans to climb Mount Everest, you have purchased your ticket to Tibet. You're no longer strategizing on how to leave a bad relationship. You have broken it off. The bread and butter of change is action. At the end of the day, the only change you will experience will come insofar as you are willing to take action towards a goal or desired outcome. The action stage can be difficult, however. Many people will enter the action stage only momentarily, or even for long periods of time, before reverting to the contemplation stage. Engaging in the action steps required to make change can often be the most daunting, as we tend to not realize the energy, effort, and time it really takes to make a change. And this is often the reason one might give up during the action stage. It is also why it is important to keep acting, as action creates habits, muscle memory, and can change your neural pathways and behaviors most effectively over longer periods of time and repetition.
Once they take action, their changes are now clearly visible. People can see that they've quit drinking, they've started exercising, they're taking their medication, whatever the action target is, it's much more observable. It's part of the reason why historically we equated change with action, because we can observe it. But we will see all the work that people do before they take action and the work they have to do to sustain that action. This is the most demanding time where people have to work the hardest. And we typically estimate that it's about a 6-month sustained effort to get through this most demanding stage.
Stage 5. Maintenance. When one has entered the maintenance stage, the rule of thumb is that they have maintained the change for at least 6 months. During this stage, you will maintain your behavioral change with new habits and actions that have become ingrained into your psyche. Be it sobriety, healthy eating habits, or even a more positive outlook on life. This is where all the payoff happens. During maintenance, you will start to see the benefits of your change more concretely, and they will become habitualized and hard to change away from. Maintenance can last for years or a lifetime. There really is no limit to it. However, it is not uncommon for relapse to occur, even years within maintenance. But the longer this stage is maintained, the more unlikely relapse may become.
After about 6 months, people progress into maintenance. Historically, we used to think of maintenance as basically a stable stage where people don't have to work. We'll see that they do need to work to keep moving ahead, but they don't have to work as hard as when they are in action. Now, how long does maintenance last? Here there's less clarity and more disagreement in the field. There are those who see maintenance of changing chronic behaviors as lasting a lifetime. So, for example, in the recovery movement, you're always in recovery, you're never recovered. On the other hand, historically in the addiction field, most scientists assume that the worst is over in 6 to 12 months because the relapse curves dropped dramatically from 6 to 12 months. Most of the relapse had occurred, leveled off from 6 to 12 months. And historically, we quit following heroin patients, alcohol abuse patients after 6 to 12 months. In our studies of naturalistic changes over a 2-year period, we estimated that maintenance would be more like about a 5-year period. People thought we were too pessimistic, but in the Surgeon General's report of 1990 that we helped to author, the national data were clear. After 12 months of not a single puff, what percentage of smokers go back to regular smoking? And it's about 40%. And it's not until 5 years of total abstinence that the risk of relapse goes down below 5%. Now, when do we consider patients cured from cancer? It's 5 years without symptom remission. It may well be that the major causes of cancer take 5 years to cure as well. That doesn't mean that we will be working with the patients for that whole time. It does mean that we need to help them prepare for what will be the highest risk for relapse during that stage.
Stage 6. Relapse. Of course, at any stage, save pre-contemplation, it is possible to relapse to a previous stage, and people often do. We all have previously held beliefs and behaviors that we have changed our minds about, or just simply lost the habit of engaging in. And that is completely okay, as it is up to you to determine what changes you need to make. At the end of the day, no one can decide for you. You must decide for yourself what is best for you. Recognizing your own triggers, stress points, and limitations can help you avoid relapsing, though this requires a great deal of introspection and self-awareness. Many find it incredibly fulfilling. Relapses are very normal and are generally not something to be ashamed about. On the road to recovery in drug addiction, for example, shame from relapse can often keep people in the pre-contemplation stage for far too long. This can be a powerful emotion that is difficult to overcome. But remember that it is simply a feeling that if we obey can hinder our own development. Learn how to move past shame and guilt quickly. Try to view it outside of yourself and move on. Identifying too much with regret will keep us from making the changes necessary to have a meaningful life. Even if you have to relapse 1,000 times, you are better off for trying and failing than not trying at all. Change is often hard, and when we see a lack of change in ourselves and others, it can be frustrating. But understanding what stage yourself and others might be in can bring insight into why we may not be ready for change. It is also important to understand incentives and how they drive human behavior. Incentives matter, and don't ever forget it. If there's no incentive for change, 99 times out of 100, it's never going to happen. If you want people to behave in a particular way in your relationships, community, or workplace, you must understand that everyone is driven by incentives. And until the proper incentives are in place, you won't have much luck to achieve change in yourself or others. Understanding where people are on the change journey can help you and everyone around you have a more cohesive and peaceful life. You can now let go of the angst you might feel when those around you are behaving or believing things you find anathema, as there is no way they are going to change just because you tell them. They need the proper motivators and a certain degree of free will. It allows you to let go of the need to change them. Understanding these stages is helpful in weaning ourselves off of the addiction to violence and the use of force when things don't go our way, or people don't act the way they should. It helps us to recognize when we can reach someone, or when it's not worth spending our time trying to change them ourselves. This also forces us to truly understand individuals, not monoliths or group identities, but the living, breathing people who are right in front of us, not some socio-political abstraction based on gender, sexual orientation, or ethnic background. We have to investigate what an individual's beliefs are, discover their preferences, cultural background, financial situation, and so forth, to truly understand how they think, what motivators underlie their behavior. And finally, change is almost never rational. The vast majority of human beings do not adjust their beliefs or behavior simply because they have been presented with the best ideas or arguments. People tend to change for powerful emotional reasons. On leaving the pre-contemplation stage and going into the contemplation stage, you are going to be led there by mostly visceral and emotional reasons first, and then you will find the logical reasons afterwards. This is crucial to take into account when trying to persuade others to change. You are most likely not going to reason them through facts and logic into a change of heart. So let's take all these concepts into account. Through identifying what stage of change one might be in, respecting their sovereignty, and understanding that we are all incentivized by mostly emotional reasons as opposed to intellectual ones.
I feel unhappy. I feel so sad. I have lost the best friend that I ever had. She was my woman. I love her so.